Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Man Talk podcast. Today, Julia and I have a guest that I've wanted to get on for a long time, but I never knew if I'd see him again. His name's George. George, welcome to the podcast.
Yo, happy to be here. Nice to
Good,
nice to see these familiar faces.
good to see you too.
It's been like who knows how long? Probably in person. It's been like, whew, maybe 5 years, Jake.
I think the
Probably.
last time was In and Out in 2015, and I just got back from the oil industry, and I was venting to you about how hard operations school was. And
Oh
then,
yeah,
yeah, you remember that? I was not, I'm better now. But you heard me
yeah,
vent, and I really appreciate that. So George was a big friend then. Like he took the blow, like one of the first blows of me venting, like hard, and I didn't hold back. And I'm really
oh
sorry I
no,
did that.
oh no, don't hold back. That's necessary, man. I'm pretty sure I did the same thing to you during college.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, that's true. Yes, very true.
Lay bare all of your insecurities so that you can grow and at least understand articulate what happened and put into newfound knowledge. Hopefully, at least.
Oh
I'd say
yeah,
so.
oh yeah.
And yeah, George, he's been there with me and Julian for some time. But George and I both did chemical engineering together, and now we're going to be talking about success and the different layers that it takes for different variants of success, because it's not just one type. And so we'll dive into that a little bit. But
Oh yeah.
George, please break down your background. Like, so I only knew you at UC Davis, but did any of your success and who you became and who you wanted to be, was that a lot before UC Davis?
Hmm. I mean, there's definitely some skills that I learned before UC Davis. I think probably the biggest skill. I mean, so I'm just gonna start off with this. I'm an extrovert and an engineer, which is a weird combo, right? Like most of the time, engineers are like super introverts. So I think that kind of puts me in this like weird little sector, right? Um, so I think the first time I like thought of like a career was actually, I don't know if you guys know this, but I actually did like acting classes when I was younger.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
Ah, I
I
didn't know
did.
that.
Yeah. I did acting class for a whole year in Novato, California, which is like Marin County.
Yep.
Did the whole headshots and like all like acting school and stuff. Um, I did one commercial for Welch's. It was like the one thing, and Welch
Oh,
Hey.
was great.
wow.
I'm trying to find it still to this day. I cannot find it. Um,
Right.
and I was the first time I was like talking, like I was by myself and I had to talk to other people because like you want to do scenes and you like need to get out of your own shell. Dude, that was so intimidating because in acting school, there's not ages. Like when you're in elementary school, middle school, like everybody's around the same age. But in acting school, you can deal with, you have a scene with like someone who's like a 17-year-old. I'm only like, let's see, seventh, third grade. That would put me somewhere around 8 years old, right? 8, 9 years old. So like imagine an 8, 9 year old trying to talk to like a 16 or 15-year-old being like, hey, you're getting your lines wrong. And that's like, you got to have a lot of confidence to just do that, right? And some
Is that
kids are
what
going
you did in the audition?
yeah, oh, during classes. Audition was
Right.
like monologue. All the auditions are mostly monologue. Sometimes they have you work with somebody else, but I think as a kid, like they don't really, somebody just like gives you lines. It's usually like a producer or something just gives you lines and you work with them. But after that, it's like basically you have acting classes and then you do scenes with other people. So that was the first time I
Gotcha.
was like, where like my parents were like, all right, you got to learn your lines. Like we're paying all this money, and I'm like, oh man, people actually depend on me. I have to like be successful, right? What is successful? And it's just like, all right, if I know my lines, maybe that would be good enough. But then I could be the best person in like on the team, but the scene depends on everybody. So I had to help out other people, and I was just like, all right, how do I help out these people? That's probably like the first like real thought of, hey, I actually have to like collaborate with other people. Um, and then I did like another like play, like in high school, but like I would say academically, oh man, I didn't really struggle too much academically. I kind of just, followed the instructions, kind of followed like the teachers, and I just took the time to took the initiative on a lot of my own like case study. Like could be like math, could be reading. Like I think I just had a passion for science and math, and also a passion for music, which some people may argue it's math related, right? It's like numbers and patterns, and there's a rhythm to it. You gotta have like a good sense of time. And yeah, so like all these kind of things, it's just like I'm a jack of all trades, master of none, as I like to say. And that's kind of like the overarching theme of everything I did before college. Like I just like doing a little piece of everything. I did acting, I played guitar in a band. I did all the math and science stuff. I was in like gaming club, French club. So yeah, just doing a lot of things. I wasn't afraid to like fail, right? I wasn't afraid to just like try something out. I never thought of like, hey, I want to do this because I'm good at it. It's more like I want to do it because it's interesting. And in college, I had to flip that. All right, in college, I went to chemical engineering because one, I wanted to pick something I wasn't good at. The thing I was good at in high school was like computer science. We didn't have a full like computer science class in my high school, but um, I had a teacher who had a computer science degree, and he was my calculus teacher. He was also the sponsor for video game, or like not video game, but like the game club, and that was like a club I was really active in. Became president of it senior year, and so he basically like took a couple of friends of mine, and we played this game, Mastermind. You ever heard of that game, Mastermind?
Oh.
No, it's basically like a game where you have multiple guesses and you have a combination, and this combination is like color and sequence. So you have to guess like the right color and the right sequence after I think it's like 15 times. So you get hints after every guess of like, oh, you got the right color or you got the wrong color. So like he taught us how to program that, and it came pretty naturally. So when things come pretty naturally, I'm kind of not too interested in something. It's only when I really suck at something, and like chemistry was something that it's kind of hard for me. We didn't have an AP chemistry program, so I just took regular chem, which was fine. I did well in, but then chemistry in college was like so hard. Like freshman year, I mean, Jake, you can probably attest to that. Like UC Davis, like those weeder classes, like I was potentially one of those weeder, kids that was trying to get like filtered out in the weeder classes.
Hold on to the
Uh,
average. Hold on to the average. That was me.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, and so like the first year, I was again jack of all trades. I was trying to do like the music. I was trying to do like DJing, music production. Like I said, I played guitar back in high school, and then I got really interested in like electronic music. And so just to kind of conclude, I'm making this a long story, but just kind of conclude like the whole college thing. Um, I realized I can't just do the jack of all trades, master of none in college. Like I actually have to narrow down my interest to something to actually, do well in. And like, cause I hate to say it, but at that time, GPA matters. Like at that time, and I'm gonna get to this because at the end of the day, GPA kind of doesn't matter to me. I think GPA shows that you can like follow instructions and be reliable, but it doesn't show innovation, and it doesn't show creativity. I think college is really bad at like measuring creativity because you can be really creative, but you can be terrible at following instructions, right? They're kind of like
Right.
two opposing skill sets. And if you have both of them, oh, kudos to you. But normally it's like one person masters one or the other before they master the other, right? Like I would say I mastered not mastered, but like I was comfortable with being creative, but I wasn't comfortable being disciplined. And I think college like forced me to be disciplined. Um, but then afterwards, so this is where things kind of get a little wild in my career. Graduated in ChemE. Actually, did the whole double major in biochemistry and ChemE. I started out biochem because I was originally a biomedical engineer. You guys probably remember that. And then I switched
Right.
over to biochemistry. And then biochemistry, they're like, oh, we can actually take 3 or 4 extra classes, and then you'll get a double major. Which I think they closed that because people realized like, hey, that's probably not fair, which is true. Which is true. But I mean, I saw an opportunity, right? And I was like, no one's saying no, and no one's arguing against it, and it's just extra classes. Like, no one's gonna stop me. Might as well do it. And with that, I was able to like get an internship at Genentech, which was a hard struggle because like the way I got my internship there was like networking as much as possible. I think I like talked to them sophomore year, junior year, senior year. I like kept the
In
contact
person
going.
or remote? In person or remotely?
In person. So this is before COVID, right? Like remote wasn't
Right.
really a thing until COVID happened.
Right. Right.
um,
Right. Right.
so this year would be like sophomore year would be at 2011. So I started 2010. So 2011, I heard about Genentech. I was all about genetic engineering. Like I wanted to do that stuff. I thought that was the future. And we're seeing that is the future, right? We got the mRNA COVID vaccine
Yep.
shelled out pretty quickly because of CRISPR.
Right.
And so yeah, so Genentech was like a dream place to work at. And after like all this work, all this networking, and like showing people, hey, like I didn't have a good GPA in college. I did not. I like hustled up junior and senior year for sure. I hustled hard, and that's because of Jake. Huge kudos to Jake on that one, because this guy like basically like knew everybody. Like you were just friends with everybody, and I was like, man, like I need help, Jake. And that was embarrassing for. I would say it was embarrassing for me because I never really needed help. Like high school was like kind of a cruise. Like weeder classes, I kind of still made it on my own, but it wasn't like the best. But then like I had to lean on other people and I had to be like comfortable with that. So you got me comfortable with that for sure, and like working in study groups and stuff.
We needed a team,
And
man.
yeah, I needed a team. So basically, after like finding that like study group and finding the teams, I was able to like land that spot at Genentech. Just like because the guy saw my like, hey, this guy is a go getter. He's hustling his way. His name was Rudy, if you remember Rudy from the lab.
Yeah, that's familiar.
Yeah, and he took me under his wing, and he was just like, hey, how could I don't care what your GPA is, but like, could you prove that you do the work? Yeah, we have like policies around it, and I'm gonna talk to people and see like, hey, I got a good hard worker. He has talent to be, a good engineer. Like, I want to see if we can help him out. So then he put me into contact with the right person in automation engineering, just because I still wanted to like focus on like the computer stuff afterwards. So he put me there. That was my first internship, and then afterwards, again, same thing. Talking to multiple people. How can I like upgrade my skills? How can like I struggle in this section, and I struggle with like finding projects that lean on a lot of engineering principles. And there's something like, oh, Genentech's not going to focus on that because they're too slow. Right? It's a biotech place. Like you have the FDA all over the place, and
And all
these
the other
projects
alphabet soups.
Yep. All these projects take what minimum, typically like 7 to 10 years, right?
If you want to go from R&D to R&D scale up, approvals, production, validation, all that, and then actually getting it to the clinical trials and all that stuff, finally getting the FDA stamp, and then you can sell it after making a big stockpile. Yeah, it takes a while. 7-10 years is about right.
Yep. 10 years is pretty typical. But the time I came in, I was working on this big project. It was like a new manufacturing plant in Vacaville. Jake, if you remember, it was a CCP2 project. That's what it was called. And that was a big thing. And I think even after when I was there, it took another 3 years. So like I think the whole thing took 10 plus years to actually get done. So that was like one of the big projects that I did. And a lot of the higher ups that like I ended up talking with and networking with, they were telling me, hey, you got to go to oil. And I'm like, oil? That dinosaur of an industry? Like, that doesn't make any sense. I'm like, what?
Right.
Like, yeah, we come from Chevron, we come from Shell, and like they really use a lot of these chemical engineering principles. And I'm like, man, I really said I wasn't gonna go oil, but I was like, well, I'm gonna be honest, like they pay well and they're challenging. So I was like, all right, let's give it a shot. And I already had this like job lined up with an automation contracting company, and my friend who worked at Chevron, his name's Richard, and he was like, hey, why don't you try interviewing for Phillips and Chevron? Like I think that's actually a good idea. And I'm like, but they're like the GPA sticklers, right? And like again, I had like not the highest GPA, but I can like talk and explain my projects and stuff. And one thing that I did, the company I ended up working for was Phillips 66. So what I ended up doing at the networking event that they had at Davis, I straight up said, hey, this is the automation system that I'm familiar with at Genentech. These are the other ones. I think you're using, and I said, like, you're either using like Rockwell PLCs or you're using some type of like Honeywell for like full automation. And I just straight up like said it confidently. I knew my stuff. And keep in mind, I like studied. I asked people who was my mentor, who was an automation engineer. He like knew everything about Rockwell stuff and at Genentech. And he like, taught me like what are the right words, what's the right questions you want to ask for like a whole project scope. And so I didn't come to the networking event like a college student. I came in there like, like an experienced engineer. And I think they saw, they're like, oh, snaps, like this guy knows PLCs. This guy knows DCS systems. Okay, sure. We don't have to go the acronyms. Acronyms are just like automation. like terminology, right?
Yeah.
Basically, it's
Right.
like computer systems. And they're like, all right, let's give this guy a chance. So they gave me a chance on the interview, got the job, and they gave me it, so I accepted it. I was in oil, this like dinosaur of a thing, and they're just like, hey, you're actually going to be like one of the youngest like automation engineers in Philips and all of the whole Philips network. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, because like we're realizing that computers are the future, right? And I was just, and like we don't have that kind of like ingenuity at Philips. And I was like, okay, like typically you would have to have like some operations and engineering experience or process engineering experience before you go into automation. And they
Yeah.
realized, oh, you can skip that because it's a different skill set. So
Makes
we can
sense.
dive, yeah, we can dive into the whole Philips things if you guys want to. But afterwards, this is the big jump. I went from Philips, learned a lot of computer stuff because my friend, another friend who went into tech, oil into tech, same guy actually, who worked at Chevron, and he told me, hey, you have a lot of like computer programming experience, and I did because I was learning it for funsies. Again, remember the jack of all trades, master of none. Like, I just want to see if I can basically use little like microprocessors to like look at, hey, can I build a little stock, like a stock watcher, like you would stock tracker. Another thing was, could I actually like build like a little setup stream to stream videos and stuff. Like it's called Kodi. It was like on a Raspberry Pi. If you guys know what a Raspberry Pi is.
It's
Yep.
been out for a minute.
Yeah. Been out for a minute. And then Arduino. You guys remember from the ChemE car experience? Like I was pretty decent at that.
Arduino. That's like the buzzword. If you ever wanted to like get people in, oh, this is the Arduino. Yeah, I remember. That's
Oh yeah,
cool.
yeah. So I did that stuff in ChemE, and then I upgraded it when I was at Philips because MATLAB was the coding language that we learned, if you remember. But MATLAB was like
I'm
too
still
slow.
trying to forget.
MATLAB was too slow. Actually, I used MATLAB at Philips. I had to use it. We had a whole training thing.
And I believe it
Oh, wow.
because academia and oil were the two main sponsors for our program. So it kind of makes sense.
Yeah. And then I told them, yo, screw MATLAB because it's like way too slow. And like the computer industry doesn't use that. I use Python.
Right. Makes more
um,
sense.
I think they
yeah,
caught on to
Python.
that later because I think they
They did.
started learning more Python in like 2018. They started
Good.
incorporating that into the program.
Good. Yeah. So I basically became like a Python like guru at the time at Philips. And I say Python guru for oil. I'm not a Python expert at all.
Right,
At
a
this
certain
time.
tier.
Yeah, certain tier at this time. But I was decent enough to land a contracting spot at my friend's company, this company Dropbox, which I'm at now as a full-time person. But going from biotech to oil to tech is like I would say a wild career jump. But it's just like all these little side projects that I would do, like they flourish into something. And I always call it like, hey, you have these little flowers, you have your garden, you never know which like is this flower going to blossom up to like something amazing, something beautiful. And like that's kind of what happened. Like all this like Python stuff, all this computer knowledge, all this like interest in data landed me a spot at like data engineering, which I'm noticing a lot of chemies are actually get their first like landing spot in data engineering. So I'm probably not the only one out there, right?
Probably not.
Right.
And you described the parable of the sower, which I find really cool.
Oh yeah.
Once it gets the good ground, and then it can make 30-fold, 60-fold, 100-fold. Sometimes you're throwing seed on the thorny bushes, and then it gets choked out, and it can't rise very far. Some of it throws onto the roadside, but it rises for a little while, but doesn't have any roots, so it dies. Yeah, no, that's a cool analogy.
Yeah. So that kind of concludes the whole like a little background. That's kind of like I would say the medium story. But yeah, you could dig into any like detail that you guys like think. Like I kind of gave you like short little snippets in certain sections, but there's definitely like some failures like throughout the whole thing. Like I think it took me two interview tries to get the Dropbox job. Had to be a contractor for 8 months, and then I had to interview again and be full time. And there's like at Philips, like I wanted to quit. There's like 2 times I was just like, screw oil. This is not for me. Like it's just like the people were fighting my ideas at some times, and things were just too slow. Genentech was comfy as hell. I was like, do I leave Genentech? It's like a big name. It's so nice, all the benefits and the perks. Like every moment it was just like, like there could be doubt, and there's always doubt in these like certain spots.
I'm so glad
How'd
you brought
you,
up those questions. Oh, go ahead, Julian.
I was just gonna ask, how did you push through in those moments of doubts? Was it usually just a general like, I just got to get through this, and then uh, bigger pastures off into the sunlight or the horizon, or is it more like, oh, I always just have to keep moving or something like that?
Mm. I always thought of it as like I have to like keep challenging myself and keep moving. Like the
Right,
way I thought of it is like, I'm kind of too young to just be like comfy, right? Because like my first at Genentech when I was like, oh, I want like a comfy job, like all these benefits. Like, man, I'm only like 20 and I'm just like starting my career. Like, why would I want to like settle down so quickly? And like I have all this. I always like think of like I have all this potential, right? Um, the closest analogy I had for that moment was like you go to the gym and you see like other people who are stronger than you. It's like you don't say like, oh well, they're stronger than me, and you quit. Like no, you got to
right,
like start at something. You're probably gonna suck at first, but you keep doing it over and over and over again, and then eventually you're gonna see that number went from 10 pounds or 15 pounds on curls, and eventually you're like at 40, 50 pounds, and it's like, oh, how did I get there? It feels the same effort, but because you did it over time, you got stronger, more experience. Like it's easier. Um,
right,
in oil, that was kind of like push through. It's kind of the same thing. It's like, all right, this is challenging, and I don't know what my next option is, but I use that challenge, I use that like effort to like give me that drive to find the next thing, to find the next option, and that's how I cultivated that like computer engineering job search for sure. Like I was in turnarounds. You guys know what turnarounds are?
Yeah,
Like
you're
manufacturing.
you shut the plant down so you can do the repairs and stuff frantically while you try and get it back online 2 weeks later or whenever it is. Yeah,
Yeah,
mainly
yeah,
for
yeah.
continuous processing.
Yes, right, right, right. And oil is a continuous process. So turnarounds would be like 3 months, right? And then
oh
sometimes
wow,
yeah, like this is long. We're talking
Since it's
like
a big
90
plant.
days. It's a big plant. Like we're talking 12, 14 hours a day. And you're on for 14 days straight, and you get like a 2-day break. It's rough. It's brutal.
That's bro.
right,
And so sometimes there would be moments where like you're not doing anything because you're waiting. Chemistry sometimes is slow, so sometimes there's like waiting periods. In those waiting periods, I would like, all right, I have a little bit of time. Let's see if I can like learn like a new like this computer science like process. And so like I would open up this website, like learn pythononline.com or something, or like my Python book, and just like try to study one little thing. And I didn't really know what that concept was called. I have it today. I call it like it's just about showing up. Same thing with the gym. Like
right,
sometimes there's days I don't want to go to the gym, and I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like the reason why like you feel bad about not going to the gym is because you want to like reach a certain level of success, or like, oh, I want to hit my numbers. But sometimes you don't have all that energy that day. But like you showed up. It's better to show up and not like just not go at all. Because when you don't go, like you feel bad, right? It's the same
right,
thing with like learning. When you have like Coursera courses, or if you have one of those like online courses, like what's the other one, Udemy, and you don't do it, like you say you're gonna do it, like a course for like that takes you 2 months, but then 4 months pass, and you're like, oh, I'll do it, I'll postpone it. Like that keeps happening, and that's a habit of like you keep missing that, right? And that's where that discipline has to come in. It's like it's just about showing up. It's just about doing one little thing. You don't have like you keep in your head like I have to do 1 week's 1 week's worth of courses in like 2 days. And it's like, no, no, no. Just like take a week. Okay, it takes you a week and a half, but don't let it take 3 weeks. Don't let it take 4 weeks. So then it just keeps going farther and farther and farther down the road. So
Yeah, small interval, slowly building it one by one by one, which is, I mean, we, Julie and I have joked that's like one of the memes of the podcast because it's just the slow incremental progress just keeps kind of showing up in the podcast time after time because that's really it. And I'm glad you kept showing up because that's how many people have told me, oh well, I should go, but then they don't and they feel bad. And it's you said it's a habit, 100%
yeah,
habit. Yep, and then you're just like lying to yourself. That's now a habit. It's like its own engine. It takes energy
yep,
to break it, and sometimes you're not really gonna get the exact result you want other than showing up.
yep,
So, but at least do it. And
yeah. And I'm human. Like there's
yeah,
definitely things like what was it like? I wanted to like lose a little bit more weight like during COVID. Because in the beginning of COVID, like I think everybody's like, oh, we're at home. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna eat out a little bit because like we're at home, and like it's not the best time. Like I want to get something to make me feel better.
yeah,
Um, And I was like, okay, I'm gonna lose weight, and then nothing happened. Eventually, it's like, okay, I don't want to lose weight. You gotta like not lie to yourself. If you keep kicking the can down the road, stop lying to yourself and just say, you know what, I don't want to lose weight. I want to make myself feel comfortable, because that broke the habit to me. And I'm like, okay, clearly I want to make myself feel comfortable, but I have to like, if I want to meet my goal, I have to find a diet or I have to find the right things, and I have to put in work into it to get around the whole like the comfort thing, because eventually you have to find something that works for you. Being uncomfortable leads to burnout, and I think that's like, until I was in tech, until I learned the whole concept of like burnout, it's like you keep wanting to do like weight training. Like I think there's people who like want to lose weight. It's like 2 pounds a week, something like really hard. I'm like, no, do like half a pound, right? Those small interval changes to reach your goal. That's way better than anything else, man. It's like realistic. Like I always tell people, stop lying to yourself. If you keep doing it, just say what the truth is. You don't care about it, and that's fine. That's fine. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to ask something else, or I was going to comment on. There were two things that I wanted to say. One of them was you described very accurately some of the same questions I had in like different parts of chemical engineering. Of, oh man, I've got this job where I'm comfy, but I don't know if it's going to be a good thing long term. And oh, I don't know about oil. I think I should be here. My peers say I should be here. I'm doing well, but maybe I should do something else because I'm going to be unhappy and I'm going to get bitter in the next year or so. Maybe I should do something about that. Real questions I've had too. And I'm so glad you decided to tackle them instead, because I know of so many people, they eventually they snap. It's not just a burnout. It's like a straight up fuse, done. They don't care anymore. The filter comes off with no warning. It's not like a happy landing. It's just straight nosedive. They like yell at their coworkers and say, "I'm out," and then and
I imagine a part of that is just an overwhelming sense of feeling too comfortable to the point where it crushes you in. And then as soon as you're crushed, you just kind of explode. It was like, oh, where'd my life go? I woke up when I'm 40 and 20 years passed by just not taking opportunities or pushing myself. So just like a retaliation against that.
Yep. Yep. For me, the whole comfortability thing is like things stop being rewarding. Like things stop, like you kind of just get a little bored. Either you get bored, or you just things just aren't you don't feel good doing the things that you're doing every single day. And because it's comfy, because you're in a habit. It's always about back to that habit. Habits are comfortable. People love habits. We're human. Like I think it's like part of our nature that we love doing the habit, the same thing over. Because when you are out of your habit, what happens? Like you feel anxious, either you feel frustrated because you're not good at something, right? All that things start coming in. What if you change jobs and you're like, oh man, I did a terrible mistake. I shouldn't have switched jobs. Like I should have stayed at my other job. But then there's the opposite case. So like, oh man, thank God. Why didn't I leave my job earlier? You know?
both thoughts have come to my mind, particularly with the job that I have now that I moved last year for. Yeah, man, what did I do? Was this did I really mess up? Did I royally mess up? I can't take this back.
Yeah.
But you get those wins every now and again where, like, I remember I got this really good win at the job I have now, like about a month and a half in. And I didn't really know its impact until about a couple months later. Like, really know. I didn't really know the impact. And it was cool because now I know for sure that, okay, no, I'm belong where I should be. And now I can make a new habit of what I should be doing with my life now. And then it spurred this whole centrifugal motion towards something with where I want to be and still maintaining this baseline habitual good habits. So that was something I really liked about that last year. But yeah, no, I'm really glad you said all those commentary things about ChemE. And for the record, for the audience, oil and pharma hate each other. They do not like each other. They do not mix.
Oh yeah. And there's also a pathway, right? Supposedly, you can go from oil to pharma, but you can't go pharma to oil. That's like a little weird thing that exists in industry, and it's just like difficulty. It's like this weird, like oil thinks like, oh, pharma's easier because everything's smaller, right? Everything's like small scale, everything's like cleaner and stuff. Oil's like big and dirty and like hard. It's more of like a military-esque environment.
Yeah.
A lot of
Right.
veterans actually go into oil. Fun fact. So that's like the transition was even weirder. That it went from pharma to oil, and they thought I was gonna be like, oh, he's gonna be like some wimpy, like pharma kid, and it's like, no, man, I'm ready to like heads down, like let's go to work.
It's a good respect
Is there
factor.
any?
Oh, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Is there any techniques or strategies you've used, George, to kind of dampen any self-doubt that you might have going along the way? Because you made some pretty big jumps across your career. It must have been some, you know, days or even weeks where you're like, what am I doing with myself? I mean, you mentioned it briefly, but what would you tell yourself in those situations?
Yeah. One thing that I always tell people is like when you have doubt, you always have to have like your support circle. Like doing things on your own, like there's like a few people that can make those like crazy jumps on their own, but usually from what I've met some pretty successful people who have like their own businesses and startups in tech in San Francisco Bay Area, and a lot of them that do it on their own, like crazy meditation people. Like they're really good at meditation, they're really good at self-reflection. um, and at the time, like I think I'm getting at a stage because of COVID, right? COVID, as an extrovert, I had to be comfortable being by myself. And literally every introvert in my social circle is like, oh, thank God. COVID, I can do my work way more quickly. Like I don't have to deal with like all these little office quirks. I'm not interrupted. I don't have to worry about other people's personalities. I'm like, wait, that's a worry for you guys?
I told you years ago, man.
Yeah. And it's funny because now I feel like the opposite effect is like, how does now I'm wondering like, man, introverts in office life, like that must have been like a strain on like their day to day. Well, for me, it was like, oh, thank God. Like I leaned on people, like the energy, right? And
Right.
now, like in COVID, like I couldn't really, lean on people as much. So I have to do a lot of self reflection and meditation. But early on, I would say like in those careers, like when I was in pharma and when I was in oil, I leaned on my social circles a lot. um, like I was dating my wife back in the day. She's my girlfriend, right? And like talking to her, talking to coworkers, keeping in contact with old relationships. That's why like I reached out to Jake. Did I reach out? No, I reached out to our mutual friend Matt, right?
Yeah, Matt.
And Matt Stebbin, and I keep in contact with him. I'd always try to like poke him either for like a birthday or New Year's, and you never know the space that people are in. And I think that's the thing I always try to tell introverts, like just like one little message could like change your day. Saying like, "Hey man, I haven't talked to you in a while. Like I hope you're doing well. Happy birthday, happy New Year." Like those little messages, people think like, oh, they're like oh they don't matter. Like they're small little things. Like no, they add up over time because it's just like, hey, I'm thinking about you. Um, and so like when I was in like those moments of self doubt, like I have like my friends, Matt was one of them. I would lean to. Jake, you would be one for sure. You were one of them in college that I was just like, hey man, I'm struggling in this thing. Like I don't think I can do this.
Yeah, we'll
Right? How
make
many
it
times?
together, man. Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
we'd said. We'll make it together. That we didn't come this far to just get kicked down, and if we do, get back up again.
Oh yeah. What's the one saying that you said I think before when we were catching up, you said it and it was like a blast from the past. It was I
I
just
know.
wish it was something I can do.
Yeah, there's
And
a story behind that. So in organic chemistry, George is he's pushing himself back up. He got kicked down a little bit from the last quarter. He's like, you know what? I'm going to do something right. And he goes, Jake, what do you think's going to be on this organic chemistry test? Do you think it's going to be Grignards? Is it going to be, electron movement? What do you think? And I'm like, George, I hope it's something I can do. And then
yeah.
it's just, yeah, it's
That
great.
was the realest thing I've ever heard anybody say. It's like, I don't care what it is. I just hope I can do it.
Then it just kept being a
Man.
meme. There's
Yeah.
lead over each other like a hard, like there was this really hard kinetics part 2 midterm that was coming up and was like something I can do, George.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's true. And it's funny because that was so ingrained in me. Um, it's like talking to other people because people were like, "Oh, can you do this? Can you do that, George?" Hey, I can try and I can learn as best as I can, and to the best of my knowledge, I'm gonna give my the good old college try. You know why? Because I just hope it's something I can do. Like that just came like back and back again. So to answer your question, Julian, I think I answered in a roundabout way. It's talking to people, leaning on them, until you get to the point, I think, in your life, and some people never get there, of like being self-sustaining, using like meditation tools. I mean, there's a lot of like good apps out there. Like Headspace was one that I use. There's another
Right.
one that was like therapy based. I can actually look it up right now. I think it's Modern Health. That was a good one. Like having like I realized COVID, everybody's burned out, so I can't really lean too much on my social circles. And I was like, you know
Yeah.
what? It's okay to talk about therapy. And I was like, not a therapy hater, but just like I don't need therapy. I can be all right.
Yeah.
And
Right.
then using like Modern Health, and this ain't, I'm not being paid. I'm not sponsored by Modern Health, but
Right.
like it's
Right.
a great app. And like talking to the therapist, like, yeah, what you're feeling is normal. Like you always have been on a grind, because like during COVID, things got on a pause, right?
Right.
And keep in mind of like I'm always seeking for challenges. I'm always trying to see like how can I improve myself, how can I, like be better, a better person, better engineer, like in whatever way.
Yes.
COVID put a pause on it, and I was like, okay, I got to be comfortable with it. And I was like trying to use like people almost like pseudo therapy, and I'm like, dude, just try it out. My wife was telling me just try it out, and I'm like, okay, sure, I'll try it. And I tried it. It was great, and I was like, okay, I only did honestly just like maybe 2 months worth of it, just like weekly sessions, just like almost like a daily checkup. And basically, she was teaching me how to like grow those skills to be self-sustaining. It's like, yeah, just have like a journal or something, which people do. They journal all the time, and I've seen people do that.
Right. Self-reflection and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. It's like those like Jake, me and you used to have those like philosophical talks all the time, right? I enjoyed that stuff. And that's like a moment of like self-reflection, meditation, and
Yep.
like, am I on the right path? That's what you need. You need checks to make sure, like, am I on the path that
How many
I
times have
want?
we asked that question?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we did, because there's that moment where you get to that point, and it could be something small, and you're just looking at like a 2-page homework assignment with 2 questions on it, and we can't do any of them. And our grade depends on it because the midterm's next week, and there's things stacking up, and you just get to that question because it gets philosophical now. Because are we still committed to this? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure.
yeah. How many times, man? How we because you get to that point, we're going to our limits so often that I think that's when you start to become philosophical by nature.
Yeah. You have to question your mindset on things, right? If anything, it's more strange to me of people that don't change their mindsets. Like if they just say they're the exact same person, like 10 years ago, and it kind of tells me like, did you challenge your mindset? Maybe your mindset's that good. Maybe you're the 1%er, but humans, like the world's is an organic thing, right? Like the internet changes. Like the internet 5 years ago is completely different. Humans like 5 years ago, like they reflect on that. You're a product of your environment. So like I always tell people, like you got to challenge yourself. Like you have to change your mindset. And like, how do you change your mindset? And some people are like, oh no, I'm the same person. Like, oh, I'm stuck in my ways. Or like, oh, what was the thing? It was a phrase that always irks me. Is when I was in refining, sometimes there would be like a weird process. It's like, oh, we clean the pipe out, we flush it out with whatever chemical, or just like with water or something. And like, why do you guys do that? Because we've always done it that way. Yeah, but why? I don't
This
know.
triggered you
We
in
just
school too.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, this,
it's triggered me in my entire life. It's like, why do you do this? I don't know. We just
Because.
just because. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no. I gotta apply. And I know Elon Musk gets a lot of hate right now, but I do like his concept of like first principles thinking. Like
Right.
break down the whole thing. You guys know what first principle thinking is? Like, you
to
guys
some
break
degree,
down.
but I'm no expert on it.
Yeah, it's basically just like you break things down to their elemental parts. Like for example, a car. Like what do you need to like create a new car? A car just has to get you from point A to point B in some type of like vehicle. What is a vehicle? And then you like start building a foundation, like a thought process. Because if you want to build a car, your first thought is like, I need 4 tires, I need an engine, a combustible engine, I need seatbelts, seats, whatever it is, and like all the extra parts for a car, and build it on. And you're just gonna you're gonna look at what's been done, and then you're just try to build upon that. Instead, scrap everything, just start fresh, and try to rebuild it on yourself. And it's like you challenge yourself creatively. Can I actually build a car from scratch? And how would I do it using current technology? That's why that whole concept of like, oh, we just always done it that way. And then another engineer who thinks they're innovative, like they takes that process that they've been doing and they do like one little band-aid fix on it. And I would look at the engineer and be like, dude, what are you doing? It's the same thing. Well, you know,
Creating Frankenstein's monster.
exactly. And you get these like weird contraptions. I'm sure you guys have seen in your careers,
Yeah.
like say like a pump with like a bunch of add-ons and like random things on top of it, and you're like, well, you know, we have to maintain it because we didn't have the budget for it. I'm like, oh my god, either you didn't argue it right, or you're just, you know, either too lazy to fix this thing and you just wanted to get it over with so you can focus on some other big fish out there.
A lot of
Right.
it is really that you hit up on another thing that industry does. Some people in industry don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to stand up for themselves or for their operators or for their process. They would rather someone else tell them what to do, and then they just kind of make some kind of band-aid fix to not rock the boat. But man, they're some of the most, I would say some of the most fulfilling things I've done in chemical engineering is when you know a decent answer. It's not the best, but you know the decent answer versus the crap subpar answer that they're giving right now. And you stand
Yeah.
for it and you give them a detailed explanation. And if they don't like it, fine, but stand for it. And because they're not going to fire you over it, just don't be a pushover.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's the first thing. I think that's like how I differentiate. There's obviously, you know, geniuses. Like what's the saying I've heard of? Like there's many geniuses, right? But there's not that many innovators, and it's because of the whole concept like rocking the boat. And like back to this whole thing, like I'm interested to see like how you guys like define success, because everybody defines success in different ways. And I remember beginning of COVID, we had these little like water cooler like questions at work at Dropbox, and they would ask us like, you know, what is success or what does happiness look like to you? Like even an even more obscure question. And I was like thinking like success, like I always go back to like, you know, are you a better person than you were last year? Like that's the most like general answer, but it works because everybody has a different version of success, right? And some people, are you stagnant? And it's back to that same mindset question. Do you have the same mindset from 5 years ago? I would call you stagnant. Like you're not changing. Are you still working at the same place? Do you still have the same title? Do you still have the same responsibilities? Just because you went from, say, junior engineer to senior engineer, but you're literally doing the same thing. You're just teaching other people. That could be success to them. But to me, it's like, are you innovating? Are you like rocking the boat? Are you creating new processes? Are you challenging, like, you know, not only yourself, but say the company, right? Like at every level, you have to like keep increasing your worldview. Like at this point in my career, like I'm trying to like be successful in like, can I actually teach others? Like what kind of knowledge have I like picked up, you know, over time, and what can I teach others? Like, I mean, Jake, you're probably an expert on this because you're like a mentor, right? You have like many mentees, and you probably stick with your mentees and your relationships with them, right?
Yeah.
And I'm looking for that right now, like kind of like a mentee process, and there's like some process, like some programs at Dropbox, like high school students specifically for like people of color, like Black or Indigenous people of color, and that kind of stuff. Because I was you know, as a Latino kid, don't want to make like too much on the race part, but like as a Latino kid, there's not too many like examples of like how to go from like a very like low income household, like second language, like English is a second language in my home, and it's like, how do you go from that jump? There's no cookie cutter way. There's no recipe to do that at all. And again, you got to lean on other people, see what works, see what it is, and break it down, and like break down what has worked in the past for my friends and see what I can piece together, and kind of just like take the best of what I've seen work in my like network. And somehow like now like at Dropbox, like we like deal with like high school students in the Mission District in San Francisco. If you know, that's very like high Latino. Now I'm in Oakland, so now I'm actually trying to like reach out to a friend of mine works at McClymonds, which is a high school in Oakland. It's predominantly Black and Latino as well, and trying to see if I can get like a STEM mentorship program there. And Jake, you were kind of an inspiration for that because like you're a huge like believer of sharing knowledge, and I think that's kind of like where I'm kind of measuring success now. Is like, how do I share knowledge? What's my reach of influencing other people with the stuff that I've learned over time?
There's a TED Talk with Benjamin Zander, and the guy said it best. It's not about me being all high and mighty. It's about how can I make other people more powerful, and that's what mentorship does. And it's so much fun, man. I remember doing it. I think it's still the most fun I've ever had, even as an introvert, investing in people, because there's this real sense of you're locking in the real good information and getting rid of the bad information for them in a way that's therapeutic. Like they're building it into them. They're getting stronger. You're reinforcing what you know already and refining it for yourself. So there's this mental clarity that's showing up to you. So you're sharpening yourself, but you're at the same time doing it for your fellow man. And the mentorship program in AICHE is probably one of the legacy moments I hope to continue to write about and continue to use as an example to do not only in the workforce, but also at church, also with other friends of mine, and maybe one day if I end up having a family, use that same metric. And yeah, very satisfying experience. I think that's one of the things that would make me very happy, and I would say successful.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm gonna flip it to you guys. What do you guys define success? I'm curious. Like Jake, Julian, like the question to you guys.
Well, it's good that you mentioned mentorship because I also agree with that notion that what the knowledge that we all have gleaned over the last decade is pretty invaluable. It's hard to replicate because what we have in it an advantage on is our age, right? So for someone going straight into college, immediately they only have their high school experience, right? So it's like, okay, so we take all of our combined job experiences, resume, workshops, our interview experiences, and pass that on to the next generation. I feel like, for me at least, that's the most rewarding experience I've had. Not, accomplishing a research project, not necessarily like even just networking, but being able to pass on that information that I have gleaned to the up and coming engineers that are going to take the battalion into the next generation.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. Jake, are you on the same page? Kind of same thing.
Oh, I mean, you already heard my mentorship rant, and
True.
we've actually done podcasts on mentorship. That was one of the first things we even harped on, because it was one of the, I mean, it's one of my gold mines to share. But I'd say success too. I mean, it's in many layers. I mean, having a good work life, I'd say that's important to me, just because there's so many hours that go into it. I would really hate to have a work life that's just it's subpar day after day after day. For me at least needs to be positive, neutral, to like consider that like, okay, that's some limited level of success, but if you can't get another gig for now, like that's cool. But anything above that I consider that a win, whether it's a soft or a hard win. As far as physically, like if this triathlon thing, if I keep this up and this habitual thing continues in my life, I'd say physically that's a big win, because there's so many people that they just put so much effort in other parts of their life, and they just don't take care of the vehicle of who they are, the human body, their own body.
Yeah.
And it's sad, right? Because it'll come out of nowhere. Oh, you have diabetes, or you're pre-diabetic. Oh, you gained 50 pounds. And these are crazy examples, but they can happen. Slow incremental progress happens in the negative too.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
And
Yep. Being like, oh, I'm just gonna get DoorDash. I'm gonna get Uber Eats, like just one time. Maybe another time. And it's like, man, you had Uber Eats like 3 times a week. That's probably bad for your wallet and probably bad for your health.
And then it's just integrated into you, as opposed to, nah, man, like I can get me the skillet, turn on the oven and the stovetop. Let's see if we can do something. I have food in the fridge. Put in a little effort. And then maybe if it's a really bad day, okay, maybe. And then maybe make an event out of it. So I don't know. Have it your way. But definitely have some level of discipline on it. Otherwise, it's just the world will use you as opposed to you using the world. I guess that's one way to say that. Like the things we own. Don't let the things own you. You own the things.
Yeah. You don't want to be impacted. You want to be impactful. Right.
Right. And
Right.
so that would be another layer of success for me. And then as far as legacy, that would probably be the last one. Like if I grow old and I know that my efforts really, like what you said today is one of the many, I hope, to continue to invest in people, and people invest in me, because people we're not like one person doesn't do it all. There's no self-made man. It really does take multiple people crafting ourselves into something beyond who we could be, and then eventually who we could become.
Yeah.
So the legacy element, if I end up getting that right, and I really I get that divine inspiration from God, that real sense of, yeah, Jake, no, you're on the right path. Just finish well. I think that would be very much what I'd consider a success.
Yeah. I actually talking with it's funny the whole like generation and passing the baton to the next generation, like you said, Julian and Jake, you said like passing the legacy to future future engineers or future colleagues, right?
Yeah.
I, that's a huge thing. A huge change I'm seeing within the next generation, right? Zoomers, Gen Z,
Yeah.
as people call them, is they're 100% ready to like give others credit, and I think like previous generations and a little bit of ours, like this whole like theory of like self-made man, like you hit it right on the nail. Because like I'm like nowadays, like I'm giving credit to so many people. I'm telling them like, yeah, I'm able to like, get where I'm at because of the help that I got from my friends, from like friends. Basically, they're like family members at this point. Like my family as well. Like I'm leaning on my brother a lot now. Like I've rekindled our relationship because like non-existent during college because you're on the grind, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And I told them like, hey, let's get back together. Let's like let me help you out. And I'm seeing that maybe it's come from social media. Like I don't know if you guys use social media too much, but like say on Instagram or Reddit or like YouTube. Like I know like big YouTubers even give credit to their editors now. Like because editors are in the shadows, right? Like
Yeah.
I always tell people when there's a good singer, like I'm pop culture references, Billie Eilish, which is a big artist, like her brother, who's a great, amazing music producer. Everybody, more people know Billie Eilish in the beginning of her career, and very few people knew Phineas, who, without Phineas's work, like Billie Eilish would have shine, and she actually mentions like, yo, my brother's here, and now a lot of their songs is Billie Eilish and Phineas, and you're seeing a lot of changes within music producers. Hey, like we have a producer here, because producers are way underpaid because they're almost like interchangeable, but artists gets most of the credit. They're the face of the project, right? And I think that's why they get a lot of like extra effort, money, and investment into like the whole branding of like what they are, because they're the face of it. But at the end of the day, I love it when when a person gives credit. Like for example, like big name, like Peter Thiel or Tim Cook. Like how often do you hear like CEOs talk about like this person here, like say like my VP of engineering, like you see it from time to time, usually only during big releases. But if I would see like them to be more engaged in like celebrating their employees, celebrating their workers, I think that's the future. And I'm seeing like a lot of these new businesses, like people saying like giving credit like on LinkedIn, like, hey, I just started my new business. This is my new team members. This is my VP of engineering, and it's literally just like a 4-person crew, but they're celebrating each other, and like we need that. I think we definitely like want to give that, like it's just, and that the next generation is like definitely like setting the foundation on that. I'm pretty happy with like what they're doing, and I'm trying to copy them actually. Now I'm going back into like Twitch, social media, trying to like do little things here and there, and I'm like, how did I learn OBS? I learned it through like my brother and his crew who used to work for like an AV club, and they're basically like editors, and they taught me, and I tell them on Twitch like, oh yeah, I put like little credits for them for teaching me. You got to celebrate people, man. Like that's definitely where I think we were lacking before, and hopefully that changes is going to be set for the future.
Yeah, the one directional transfer of knowledge, which was probably the older way, where you have this smart person in the classroom, the professor, and they just talk information at you and you kind of absorb it and, okay, take it in. That's probably going the way of the dinosaur and going more towards this interactional relationship where, okay, professors might be telling you something or your mentors might be telling you something, but as a mentee, you're also providing feedback. And that synergistic effect that you get from that feedback is what makes it a valuable experience for both people involved, not just a one-sided experience where you're just shoveling information down the pipeline.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, totally, man. Um, as far as any other questions, I only came up with 3, and the real reason why is I know George, you got me to do things that I wouldn't necessarily do on my own. Like I met with ChemEs and stuff, but you'd be like, "Hey, man, like let's try the problem this way," and I go, "Well, will it work?" Reluctantly, this is not what the method says, but fine, let's try it. Um, and that would be one level, and then another level would be, Jake, come on, just stop trying to budget so much. Budget a little bit of time to go out to eat with me, and then just little things.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you did, because George taught me a little more about the fun parts that we could have doing it. But then I taught George a little bit of some of the fun that we could have, I guess maybe with just the concept of a study group where it doesn't have to be so rigid and everyone can kind of chime in as needed. It just got a little crazy though, because there were some of them that you'd have people that would want to just take the answers. And then you'd have you have people like poaching, ready for the next question. They're who's got maybe Jake's got the answer, maybe George's got the answer. And that kind of ruined it a little bit, but I think we just kept working with it anyway, because if they're just trying to take answers, look, we'll help you to a degree, but come on, man, you got to be able to pull your weight too. I think that's
it's a give and take.
It's a give and take.
Yeah. I remember those people. I know exactly what you're talking about. And I think specifically the one where I think you saw it. It was MATLAB. It was a MATLAB course in senior year, and everybody's like, "Oh, I forgot MATLAB," because that was like a sophomore year class, right? And what happened? I got bombarded every day with like random people, and like, "Oh, I'm part of the study group." I'm like, "Oh, just because you're part of the Facebook group on ChemE study group or Eng library, something like that."
Yeah, all 70 or 80 of us.
Yeah, all 70 or 80 of us. Like, "Oh, you can help me out," and I'm like, I barely know you, man. I've talked to you maybe like once or twice. Like, sure, I know your name, but I'll give you direction, but I won't do it for you. It's funny because like nowadays at work, sometimes that still happens. And some things don't change, man. Some things don't change, right? Because those engineers go to places, right? They get full-time jobs too.
That's true.
Yeah, and I always tell people, and my friend actually taught me this, to make sure to filter out those people, to like make them work a little bit for themselves. And I say like, what have you done so far? And usually they're like, well, I haven't done much. I'm like, what do you mean you haven't done much? What have you done? And I'm a stickler for like, what have you done? And if they tell me like, well, this is more of your expertise, so I'm just going to ask you. So I haven't really done much. And I'm like, okay, I'm not here to do your job for you. Give it, tackle it. See what you can come up with, because then I put them in a position where they can learn, right? I'm a big believer of like teaching people to fish instead of giving them a fish, right? That's the old parable. And eventually when people come to me asking for help, like, hey, I've tried this, I've tried like 3 different methods and I've come with nothing. And that shows me, hey, you're at least trying, and maybe you don't have the knowledge of how to do this, but you're trying, you're giving attempts, and you're a go-getter for it. Dude, those are the people I'm willing to like go out of my way with, because that's what we did in the study group. I think Jake, me and you kind of ran the thing at one point, right? Like you were just taking point with all the names, and I was trying to take point with all like the knowledge as much as on the grind. It was like me, Matt, and yeah, we were just trying to like go for it as much as possible.
It was so funny too, because I didn't expect. It's not. Some people think, oh, Jake may have planned it this way. This was not a plan. This is the way it organically showed up. All the transfer students show up and they don't have any friends, or their friend groups are kind of this makeshift, ragtag group, and then all of a sudden, if you start helping them every now and again, you might learn something from their end, which they help me in ways that I couldn't have prepared for, because they just know more about life, right? And like Steve, great example. Matt is another example, but Steve for me was one of those guys that would just teach me about life stuff in return. And then there was this back and forth that was really cool. And guess what? When you're both genuine, fun stuff starts happening, like study groups and friendships, and you've got people to go to class with, and then you've got all sorts of things that can come out of it. Mentorship might start coming out of it, and then trust. You start building the trust, and that's what I liked when we did like senior, when we went to be like the senior reps. It was we jumped up there because it was okay. We built it over time.
Yeah. It's a community. It's like building that community around you, and people always think like, oh, how do I build community? Like they want some like magic like words or some shortcuts of like you do this. This and this, and
you have to show up.
Yeah, you have to show up, man.
So like this whole conversation, I was just listening and nodding, and I'm like, oh, that's my talking point. Oh, that's my talking point. You just keep hitting the nail on the head. It's like, okay, well, George has everything down,
He came
It's
prepared.
good. It's good. Yeah, very prepared.
I'm just talking off the top of the dome.
Yeah. It's spot on.
Thanks. Like it's COVID, man. That self reflection, like,
Right.
because this is probably gonna sound, I think, strange, and I'm actually happy that you guys gave me like an opportunity to talk about this,
Yeah.
about like what success is, because I got to a point where I've pretty much hit most of my goals that I had probably my early 20s, which is like I want like to be at a place where it's like a nice nice job, like full-time job, to put it in a way like a salary man, right? Like a good salary man, because I didn't have that many like financial opportunities like younger with my whole family, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna set myself up for financial independence, stability. I got there. All right, now I wanted to like go into an industry that actually supports innovative thoughts, because we both know farm and oil, they're a little slow on the pickup. And here it's like you have an idea and they tell you, all right, how much do you need? How can we support you? And I'm like, whoa. It's so fast sometimes that I can't keep up with it. Like, honestly, I
Wow.
can't.
Yeah, you actually
um,
said yes. Wait, what? Yeah.
yeah, no, in tech, it's like if you mention an idea, you better be ready to like give action items. So like, all right, what's the first step that you need to like start the process, which is really fast and really intense. Which is like why it's like I think one of the most sought after industries. One, because all the crazy benefits that you hear, which to the most part I would say it's like pretty true. And then the work life balance, which is great, because you have people who, hey, if you're working hard, like we gotta make sure that you don't get burned out, and we gotta take care of you because you're still a human being, like you're not a machine. In oil, I feel like they treat you like a machine. Sometimes like a machine get like, come on, like how how could you work 14 days on for almost like 2-3 months, and then a machine has a whole turnaround? They get a break for 3 months because you want to break in a system for $1 million. How much do you think a human life is? I'm pretty sure human life on like some insurance book is worth more than $1 million, but yet they treat you like as replaceable parts sometimes.
Yeah, you got to be
So
careful, man. It could be very soul crushing in the oil industry.
oh yeah. But like in tech, being there, I've gotten to the point where it's like, okay, I've hit my like success metrics, and like now we're talking about building community. But then what's the next, like, do I keep pushing on that innovative challenge? And it's like letting go of those old goals, which is like maybe I'm like a little, killing the dead, like beating the dead horse with a stick here. But that new like challenge, that new mindset, like how do I keep building on that, like that tech, that tech skill, like do engineering skills? Because sometimes people like want to go the PhD route. Sometimes people want to go the whole entrepreneurial route. And what's the next step here? Like a lot of people are like, I would say I'm pretty privileged on the spot that like, hey, I've gone all this effort, all this work that I've put in, it's bared fruit. Now what do I do? Because a lot of people would say like, oh, you're in a spot where you can be comfortable. But as you guys know, I'm not that guy.
Right.
If you want to be comfy, I'm not that guy. I have a wife, and like family is probably going to be. It's not too far away. Like I'm turning 30 this year, so
Like the rest of us.
Yep.
right, like the rest of us, right? Like, but probably start a family within 35. That's kind of like in that range. But we're in that horizon. Hopefully, this whole COVID thing gets figured out within the next year or two. Hopefully, but who knows how that's gonna like age in the future. Um, and so like maybe family is the next thing, and that's why I say like, what does success mean to you guys? Because I know there's a classmate of ours, Daniel Alleman, right? He started a family. That dude looks happy as hell. And I have a friend who asked me, oh, who's like, as who's the most successful? I'm like, what does success mean? Like, who's making the most money? Who has the most influence? I'm like, sometimes people want to like settle down, start a family, and they're the happiest people. And sometimes like if you get so focused on what your career is and you want to be some defining point, that could be your focus too. But are you happy doing that? And I love giving this example of you guys ever watch this movie Pixar's Soul? Have you guys watched that?
No.
Yep.
Yeah, Julian, you watched it, and Jake, highly recommend it. It's on Disney Plus.
Okay.
Um, so the movies basically follows this jazz musician, and as a lover of music, Jake, I think you would really like it because it's a
Okay.
jazz musician
Yeah.
who is a music teacher for high school or like middle school. I think it's like elementary school or middle school. And I'm not gonna give too much of a spoiler of it, but the whole message I think of that hit me was he was in a barber shop talking to this barber, and the person was talking about like, oh, this I want to be a jazz musician. I'm playing with this person, and like, oh, like, maybe you're not reaching your success or your family. It's like, no, slow your roll. I'm happy as a clam, my man. I'm here. I get to talk to interesting people. I get to spend time with my family. I get to enjoy life. And sometimes people like on that grind, you forget what you're doing it for. Like you forget what's the whole point. And I think I struggle with that, like COVID for sure. I was just like, I got to a point where like, I'm doing well, like, but what did I do it for? Like, did I do it for me? Did I do it for that? Like, I'm pretty sure everybody has asked that question in COVID, like that
Right.
reevaluation of life. It's like, what am I doing? Am I doing this for me? Am I proud of what I'm doing? And did I pick the right hill to die on, like of my life? Like maybe I want to change hills, and that's why a lot of people are like, I think there's a lot of news media right now saying like a lot of people are quitting their jobs, and people aren't going back to jobs. And one case is obviously like economical, is people in the retail business don't want to go back because of wages, because they're like, hey, I'm tired of being a slave to 15 hours. I can't live on this stuff. Like people working at Walmart, like some people are like on the welfare, like they're on some type of like either food stamp systems or Walmart, like they're struggling day to day because they can't sustain a family. You can't pay tuition normally nowadays. Can you imagine? You can't pay that what is it, like $15,000 tuition for a Zoom class anymore? The tragedy.
Yeah, that's pretty rough.
That was sarcasm, by the way. I think that's fucking excuse me. That was blasphemous that you have to pay so much money for Zoom classes when like
Right.
you could do a Coursera class or you can do like open courseware, and that's like not highly valued.
A lot of people are rethinking this whole concept of online class. Like, wait a minute, I'm going to let's say going to a University of California, and you got to take 90% Zoom classes. That's like laughable because you went there, or you're gonna want to go there to meet people in person. You're gonna hang out and see all the classrooms, do the study groups, all the stuff all that experience is like completely shattered.
Yeah.
And so it's like, why would you pay that much just to do it pretty much from the comfort of your own home? How does that make you change yourself into like the best person you want to be? Which was another question. I remember being 18 years old going, I wonder if I could become better by going through this college.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you're actually in the comfort of your own home, like you have probably home stressors, right? And you probably are thinking about stuff at home. Like when I was in college, I was like in a bubble. I was in the college bubble, and you were talking to the same people, going through the same struggles, and like you were just like trying to figure out what's the best way to get out of this, of the trenches of college.
Trenches.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, it's something that like I think the networking part is like huge. I honestly would say like people would tell me like, oh, like why didn't you just go to community college and transfer over? And I'm like, those first 2 years, like I cultivated so many relationships. And like Jake, you brought it, you said it right. I pushed you like, hey man, let's go get some food. Let's go get halal. Let's go get College Junior.
And you made me break the jump from Carl's Jr. to halal, because at first I wouldn't do it. I'm like, nah, that's too different. You're like, nah, man. And then Steve finally was like agreeing with you one day. He's like, bro, you're gonna get it and you're gonna like it. I'm like, fine, yeah. I'll try it. And then, now I'm like, you guys did me a real solid. Thank you. I actually like this stuff.
I miss it.
Me too. I haven't had it since like right before I left Northern California. But I remember I had it for a century ride, and I remember that being just the best. That was the best cycling food. It was great. I miss it.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. Like those relationships where you just like grab food. I mean, there's a version of like virtual, and I would challenge anybody there. Those of you listening, like if you have ideas of how to like build a true virtual way to kind of cultivate that relationship, shoot it out. That's a business idea right there. Because right now that's what Facebook's trying to do, right? With this whole meta concept. I don't think the way they're approaching it is the right way, but what do I know? I think just like having the Facebook meta label on it is probably not going to work for them. But like even my work is trying to figure it out, and it's just a hard problem because I think humans are inherently like people. Like they we're hunter gatherers, and then like we need those social structures to like to blossom to be the best that we are. And doing it virtually in computer, like we haven't figured that out yet. Like computers are so new. Like we have the webcam. This is nice, but being in person, like you can kind of see my body language, right? Like you can kind of see something. You see this part of me, right? But maybe I'm like a little more hyperactive, you can kind of pick up on that. Maybe you guys are just more like laid back. You're in your comfort, your own space. Like there's like little things like that you don't pick up on. I think being in this virtual space,
Yeah.
especially like the water cooler conversations. I know like talking to introverts sometimes they don't miss it, but I think it pushes them, right? Like introverts get pushed by extroverts to like be the best. Like that's why extroverts tend to be like in like sales mentality because they have to keep talking to people, or like in a CEO mentality, or like mentorships or teachers, like any place where they want to like create a community. You're gonna find extroverts kind of leading the pack there. And so like I think communities are being built very slowly nowadays, like in person, but virtual. It's you kind of have to like put in a lot of effort because like I know Discord's a big thing that I've been leaning on nowadays. I mean, you guys are using Discord, so that's great. Like finding servers of like for example, I have a friend, and I don't want to get into this topic, but he have a friend who's getting really into cryptos and NFTs, and he's like, "Yo, man, get on this Discord server," and I'm like, I don't know anything about it, about NFTs. And I'm like, I know a little bit about crypto, the technology, and I know people who know less about the technology than I do are putting thousands of dollars into it. But hey, I'm learning a new topic. Go into Discord. There's like podcasts and YouTube streams that I've been like listening to nowadays, and it gives me this like pseudo relationship with like people, but it's not quite the same. Twitch has this like Twitch chat, which I think is very interesting, right? It's like this like weird organic kind of thing that just kind of, but it's like the internet. Like I think being anonymous creates this like weird culture with certain people, right? Like you have like the typical trolls, and then you have people who are extremists. I know the internet kind of pushes me to be more extremist at times, where I say a hot take, a fiery opinion just to get some reaction because I just want to see what
Right.
humans are. But in person, you're not going to say hot takes. You're not going to say something hurtful because there's a face to it, right?
You gotta own it.
There's consequences to your statements. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
like what you
I
said
don't know.
about Daniel, because I'm so glad you brought up Daniel Alimon, because that dude, yes, I subscribe and completely agree with his lifestyle. That's pretty much a great direction that I hope to pretty much get within like 5% of what he's doing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good style. I mean, there's definitely people that don't want kids at all and just want to do, the entrepreneurial grind. And that's also a great lifestyle. It's just like, whatever lifestyle that you want to pick, whatever you deem like that meets your goals. Because I guess another way, if you want to put success into like a little formula, I always like putting things into like little formulas to follow a KPI on it, key performance indicator, is like how many personal goals do you succeed in a year? And because like personal goals, again, like it could be different, right? Like people say like, oh, I'm searching for a salary, and I have a friend who measures success based off how much you make money wise, and I'm like, that's in my head, I'm like, that's terrible. That's a bad way to do it because then it's kind of materialistic, a little wealth seeking, but being financially independent is a great goal, right?
That's more second order, and then like what his metric is very linear. It's like, come on, man, life's not linear. It's a little more,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Because if you're financially like stable and independent, like you can help out other people. But if you're just seeking salary, you're just an individual. You're not building a community. You're not like helping out others. You're just kind of, for lack of a better word, being selfish with your contributions. Like you're just kind of taking all the reward just for yourself. And that's something I'm like, oh no, man, don't think of things like that. Everybody has their own thing. Everybody has like their own goals. But,
Right. Yeah, you pretty much blasted through all my questions, so I didn't really have much to add, George. But
I'm
that's
a
a good thing.
talker.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, I'm for sure a talker, and oh yeah, I could rant all day, but I feel like I'm like it's getting to the point of stream of consciousness. That's why I'm like, this is the first podcast I've ever done for sure. I've done like
Yeah,
10.
you've been doing. This has been great. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
But
I guess we can just start getting on the conclusion, which mainly is yeah, we are not self-made people. Both of you have impacted me to be who I am today, and probably vice versa. That is for at least from far as I can tell, and hopefully that just keeps going because people need to understand that the one-dimensional guy you're talking about is just based on salary. It's like, okay, that's one metric, but you got to know what you're
But
doing it for.
yeah,
right, and as George touched on throughout the entire conversation, was there's more to life. than just that one metric of what's your salary, right? It's like, what community have you built? What connections have you made? Who have you mentored? Have you self-reflected on your actions? Where you're going to go? Does that align with where you think you came from and where you want to end up? And all the course corrections in between. There's just so many more variables involved.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Life's organic, man. You don't know what life is. You don't know what the plan is, right? The great plan. You don't know what that is. And you're just doing the best that you can. Take it step by step, take it day by day. That's one thing. Like, I think there's a huge like people have always like get anxious over like, oh, am I gonna fail of to be successful? Am I not gonna be the person that I want to be? Sometimes failure is necessary. Like I said, I've failed many times, and just focus on what you have right in front of you. Don't focus on like what you need to do 5 years, because if you're doing the right actions, those little ones, right? I think this is
Right.
a great way to conclude it. Those small little like steps, those small intervals. That's
Uh,
how you get to your goal.
yeah, exactly. I'm laughing so much because that's what I was hammering on with Jacob like over a year ago. Like incremental progress.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that's a good spot to end it. Thank you very much, George. This was a pleasure to listen to everything synthesized in a coherent stream of consciousness.
Thanks for having me. This was
Yeah,
awesome. I would definitely be
yeah.
open to do it again.
Oh, great. Thanks.
You're welcome back. I guarantee it.
Cool. Awesome.
Cool. Thanks again for watching, everyone.